How do you beat the market? You do the opposite of what the market is doing. You think differently. You invest differently. That's exactly what Orbis is doing. They focus on the long-term prosperity of its people, its technology. We are Capital Hispania partners. My name is Patrick. This is Samantha and Nina, my two very talented partners here. Today, you came with us of a challenge on deciding whether to grow Orbis access to Japan through buying or purchasing a company, buying or creating a firm. We are here to provide you the best solution, provide you the best strategic solution that will achieve excellent growth in Japan. Now I'll pass it over to Samantha to provide you an analysis of our strategy.
Thank you, Patrick. So what Orbis has been doing is that you've been adding value to your investors, to your clients. You've been adding value through aligning your values to your investors' values. And therefore, you found an opportunity in Japan to continue adding value to your clients. First, your goal is to expand Orbis Access Japan, which is an online platform to Japan. And some of the primary and secondary issues that we have to talk about is first, to acquire, to create the online platform. And the three secondary issues we considered was the current Japanese market, the investors, the valuation of the target acquisition that you're thinking of doing, and also the cultural fit in terms of Japan, and also the cultural fit in terms of the companies. So our recommendation would be to obtain the Type 1 license and to recruit Japanese-speaking employees. Therefore, we will be creating the online platform and not acquiring. Let's have an overview of the backdrop. What is it looking like in the markets right now? So back in August, there's been a slowing economy, there's been an oil price crash, and weakening demand from China. All these means that there's a weakening global economy, but the economy has been slightly recovering in October. So therefore, we established it is good to expand to Japan. Because of this weakening economy, the backdrop, there is NISA. And NISA is what Japan, the Japanese government, has decided to help retail investors for this tax-free investment vehicle. And it encourages savings and also the growth of the Japanese economy through the growing of investors' capital, the investors' capital. And therefore, we have to look at the benefits and challenges of both alternatives that we have. So in terms of acquiring the target, the license can be easily obtained and there's local experience, but as you can see, there are a lot of challenges. First of all, we have to value the cost of the company, the price we are giving. There is the existing client base, whether does that fit with our Orbis or not, the company culture, how are we going to retain key employees, and there are huge procedures and extensive procedures in the operating department. Creating from scratch, what's most important is that we maintain that Orbis culture. We can focus on adding value, focus on the funds instead, the fund performance, instead of investing more in converting Target into becoming part of our Orbis. And however, we have to consider how are we going to acquire licenses, how we're going to hire individuals from Japan, and how we're going to establish a corporate presence. And therefore, for our selection criteria, we decided the two most important values is outside ownership and alignment of interest. And I'll pass it on to Patrick to talk about the selection criteria.
Thank you, Samantha. So as you can see, the target alignment of the chosen two of the following philosophies that Orbis follows out of the four. And right now, no outside ownership is part of that. It does successfully achieve that opportunity by acquiring the targeted securities. However, the second biggest point is alignment of interest. This is very huge because right now, Target Securities focuses as an IB institute almost. It focuses on brokerage, trading, insurance, renting equipment. This is a plethora of different operations that Orbis does not focus into. It focuses on providing performance-beat investment funds for individuals as everyone in this room, as in today. And as you can see, this does not meet our target alignment, and therefore Orbis should not consider acquiring target securities. So as you can see, it does not align with Orbis philosophy. And now I'll pass it over to Nina to discuss the valuation of target securities.
Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Patrick, and Samantha for the previous introduction. So we have briefly looked at the valuation, and we're able to run some numbers on both of the alternatives. And here you can see that the valuation of the target securities. What did we want to see from this slide? So basically, there is one key conclusion from here is that the company has not been growing at the consistent pace. And as the company does not grow at the consistent pace, you can see that that exactly something that Patrick and Samantha have been mentioning before. The company's values and the company's performance is not exactly aligned with what Orbis does, what Orbis is today. And with that being said, Target Securities does not have a consistent growth history, and we believe that this is not a best fit for your company today. And moving on to comparables of Target Securities, we wanted to look at how much you would have to pay today to acquire that company. And our conclusion is that our purchase price would be around 13 million in the Canadian dollars. And we also ran the sensitivity on those numbers. And we will go to sensitivity later. And in terms of the three key takeaways your company could take from this is that you would have to pay around 2 times EBITDA for the company. And this presents a quite reasonable price. However, however, paying 13 million for this acquisition in the other country, the company that is not exactly aligning with their performance, what can you infer from that? So basically, we believe that if your purchase price is around 13 million, the actual cost going into acquisition might double. That comes from the fact that you will have to incur all of those restructuring charges. For example, if you would consider substituting some of the business lines of that target company, and as well as we do not see any synergies between the two, as there is no, for example, you would not be able to cut any additional CapEx expenses. You won't be able to draw up on additional revenue streams from these two companies coming in together. Therefore, we suggest that paying 13 million for the company that does not align with your values and that would need further restructuring going forward is not something that Orbis should consider for its long-term profitability. Therefore, we believe that the value of the target security is around, for the 11 million, it's around 13 million in Canadian dollars. And we think this is not a reasonable acquisition price, as it might be much more for Orbis to actually integrate these two companies. And as I have mentioned before, we also ran sensitivity on those numbers, and we see the value going from 12 to 14 million dollars in the Canadian currency. And we looked at the sensitivity based on the price per share, as there might be some appreciation in the price of that company moving forward, as you would not proceed with the acquisition right away, obviously. You would need further legal considerations. You would need to require financials of that company to actually see all of the legal procedures and go through all of those procedures, as well as we looked at the premium that you might have to pay. Just to mention, the premium you have to pay, the premium that was assumed for our valuation initially was around 15%, which we consider reasonable on this situation, on the financial business for the investment for the firm's for this type of firm. And however, we obviously see that there is a range. Therefore, we saw some differences in potential acquisition prices. And with that being said, I will pass the presentation on to Patrick to talk about creating our company from scratch.
Thank you, Nita. So as you can see now, by creating your own firm, your own company into the Japanese market, by accessing a Orbis Access Japan, you will create the two target alignments. By creating own platform allows for alignment of the values, the alignment of Orbis philosophies. So what are the steps for this implementation plan? Right now, you need to create an online platform. What this entails, it's hiring selected Japanese employees. Start by doing this. Leverage your competitive advantages, as well as obtain the license. What are the costs for these? So begin by hiring Japanese speakers and writing them. Speakers and ones that can write. This will entail a $500,000 fee. This type of timeline is from 1st to 4 year. Even though it says immediate first year, this is what you need to do in your first year. However, you will be expanding the company as well as into the Japanese market. So how are you going to find these employees, you might ask? You want to first look into it internally. You obviously have some multicultural people in there that know how to speak some Japanese. You could grow them by creating workshops, cultural workshops, increase their language proficiency, as well as, if that does not work out, go into the external market. Put a job posting into the Japanese market that it requires 3 years of experience in the equity funds. Next section, start the application process for the Type 1 GSDA. Annual cost, first time cost is $150,000. After that, the annual fee is $1,500. Next is hiring one Japanese speaking full-time director. This director will be in charge of most of these legal proceeds. The biggest key of the Japanese structure of this Type 1 is to make sure that the current employees that you'll be hiring will be in contact with the officials that accept the Type 1. Japanese culture is very like that. They like to see your personal connection, personal tie with the company itself. So take them out, enjoy a good night out, and you'll feel something. They'll connect better. So what are the capital expenditures? You initially said $500,000. We do agree with you, though, that it will be doubled. This entails office, location, supplies, technology, with a total capital expenditure overall of $1.7 million for this first year, immediate year. So the extra timeline, the short-term goals, is develop funds for the NISA holders. Well, who are these NISA holders? We created this target market. These type of NISA holders are everyone, ages 20 and plus. Why? Everyone has this. It's similar to the Canadian TFSAs. You might invest it. Right now it's $10,000 for TFSA. This is going to be very similar to in the Japanese market. This is a great opportunity for Orbis to achieve excellent growth in this, returning. Investing mentality. They're diversified and risk adverse. Why? Because of the current situation in Japan. Japan right now has experienced turmoil. People are scared of investing into high risk investments. So this is why this is a perfect opportunity. So which fund works best for these type of holders? The Global Equity Fund and the Global Balance Fund. You came to us and provided that you had Orbis Fund UK. These two funds did exceptional. It beat the benchmark by over 6%, by 29% afterwards. This is phenomenal. And this is why you could market this way, that in the UK, if it could beat there, it could beat as well in Japan. So you will provide NISA with two holders, with two funds. Increase the size of the fund, as well as allow to purchase greater amount of different same investments. What does this mean? By increasing more of the funds from Japanese savers into the UK funds, funds, the two funds, you will allow to purchase more of the same stock, purchase a new stock, and increase the overall return for your whole portfolio. So how to gain clientele? We provided a certain campaign, marketing campaign for Orbit Access Japan. How are you going to do this? You're going to advertise through business events, career planning events. This will implement, target, and penetrate the people in the older age categories. Hire brand ambassadors at universities. This will provide students, everyday users. Because it's only 100 yen to invest into these two funds, this is phenomenal because you could penetrate every single group of people. Partnerships with trading simulators. This is very essential too because there's a lot of students that understand financing, that understand how to invest in the market, but they don't have the footstep to get into there. They don't have the capital expenditures, capital gains. So this is perfect to get them to experience what it's like. Finally, the long-term goals. Maintain Orbis philosophy, the 4 pillars, to stand out from the 250 competitors here, to beat those guys and win the market share in Japan. So how is this fee structure going to work? Nina will explain this.
Thank you, Patrick. So we have looked at the fee structure of your current UK fund and saw the annual growth for the 2 of the funds you are currently operating in that area. And we saw that they are consistently growing in the long term, as you're obviously a long-term focused investor and you're looking for not 1 or 2 year profitability, but the long term, maybe 5 to 10 years. So your fee structure growth for the global equity fund in the US right now is around 8.46%, and the fees for global balanced fund is around 2.5%, which leads to approximately 5.5% growth across the 2 major funds that you're operating in the UK. And we have also looked at some potential fee revenues that you could be able to collect in Japan in the future. And we saw that your asset under management could grow from around 4.55 billion in the second year to around 10.9 billion later in 2 to 3 years. So the 3 key assumptions that went into this were the covering of approximately 2 to 3% of your target population in the first few years. So you'll be capturing your clients over the years, and that way you'll be able to add additional assets into your portfolio. As well as we assumed around $1,000 investment going from each client into these funds. And as the result, we saw you being able to collect around 2.3 billion in fees over this time span of around 4 years. And with that being said, I will pass the presentation on to Patrick to talk about risk and mitigations for our idea.
Yes, thank you, Nina. Risk and mitigation will be discussed later through Q&A. As of now, we'd like to thank you, Orbis, for inviting us, Mr. Brandt. It was a great opportunity to discuss our strategy, one of the best solutions for growing into the Japanese market. We have focused on expanding the Orbis Access Japan online platform in the area by create an online presence. How are you going to do this? You're going to do this by going into the market, by hiring new employees, or internalizing these employees and transferring them into the Japanese market. This overall will create the total goal of getting that Type 1 GSDA and successfully achieving the growth of Orbis in Japan. Thank you for your time, and open for questions.
You mentioned earlier in the presentation you estimate acquisition costs and integration to be equal to the purchase price of the target. Did I hear you right?
No, I don't. So, sorry, what did you say?
You mentioned that you estimate your acquisition costs, including integration, to be the same cost as your purchase price of the target.
No, we just have estimated the acquisition cost of being around 13 million, And we believe that the integration cost might result in actually doubling this amount, because there is significant costs going into integration, such as, for example, you would be required to restructure that company and basically maybe restructure and cut down some of its divisions. And that's a significant change to the company, and that would require a lot of additional CapEx investments, as well as restructuring all of those clients. So we believe 13 million is just the acquisition price, whereas the cost must be much higher than that, the overall cost.
So I know you didn't have time to touch on it, so could you please outline to us what is our number one risk and how would you mitigate it?
Number one risk is not getting the Type 1 GSDA. Of course, that's the biggest risk. And the way to mitigate this, as I previously mentioned, is possibly creating hiring within. The best opportunity is connecting the officials with your team members, your type of employees, because it shows the type of passion that members will see, that Japanese culture appreciates. Yes. Okay.
But you mentioned earlier on that this is a great opportunity. It sounds great, so I want to get on board. So I should get on board quickly and understand that the target code is not recommended because it's expensive and it doesn't have much synergy, right? But if I'm going to build my own company, I've got to hire all these people, and then I've got to go through this licensing process. That could take years, couldn't it? And by that time, could a lot of people who are going to buy Nisas be on board with competitors already? And by the time I get in the market, there's nothing left for me. And the other thing is, if the biggest risk is not getting a license, why wouldn't I go out and find a distressed company that I can buy just for a license? So acquisition other than this target company. Why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't you recommend that as an instead?
So currently, the estimated time to obtain a license is around 1 year, but that includes application, that includes documentation, and so we believe that within, there's a maximum of 1 year that it takes for you to obtain that license. But before that license, for our recommendation and implementation, the most integral thing is to hire Japanese employees. And for that Japanese employees, it would take a few months for us to be able to hire. So we would be able to implement a lot of our processes within that year on the basis that we would get that license. As you said, that, as Patrick said, it's one of our biggest risks. But on the assumption that we will get that license and properly train employees internally or externally, we will be able to obtain that license. And was there a second question?
The second question is, why wouldn't I just go out and buy a distressed company, maybe something unlisted that's already got the license?
Yeah. So we, from our discussion for our team, we were discussing how Orbis has a very special type of culture. And that culture, we think it's better for you to be able to individually choose who you want to hire, to add value to your employees, to add into your culture, because your employees becomes owner of, eventually becomes owner of Orbis. So those employees have to be selected crucially, and we think that selecting individual employees is better than buying out an entire company of employees that may not fit into your culture.
Another thing to add, sorry. Okay, another thing to add, even though it's a year-long process for this licensing fee, it does show the possibility if you picked a distressed company, what's the chance of you firing those people, and now you're entering this new market, going to show in the PR of this. It might show negatively, and it might get spoken around with those 250 members. So that could also affect the image of the company.